Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance vessel, intrepid, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. The small exploration fleet had been mapping this edge of known space for 3 weeks now. Something about the unusual energy readings they detected had brought them to this remote sector. "Captain, I'm picking up massive objects entering sensor range," said Lisa Warren, the sensor officer. Her eyes widened as data flowed across her screen. "Sir, these are ships. Hundreds of them." John straightened his uniform jacket. "Show me." The view screen shifted to reveal a truly impressive sight. A vast armada of gleaming vessels approached, each one at least 5 times the size of the Intrepid. They were ornate beyond reason, covered in what appeared to be golden decorations and unnecessary flourishes. The lead ship was shaped like a crown with spires that served no apparent function. "Are they broadcasting?" John asked. Communications Officer Ben Patel nodded. "Yes, sir, on all frequencies. Very powerful signal." "Put it through." The screen flickered, and a humanoid figure appeared. The alien had greenish-blue skin and wore an outfit so elaborate that John couldn't tell where the uniform ended and decorations began. Behind the alien, a bridge crew worked at stations that were inexplicably plated with what looked like precious metals. "Attention, unknown vessels. You stand in the presence of the grand fleet of the Galactic Vargan Empire, masters of 300 star systems and conquerors of the 7th quadrant. I am Admiral Zektar, right hand of Emperor Drakthor, keeper of the sacred flame, protector of the..." The Admiral continued listing titles while John exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Steve Rogers. Steve's mouth twitched at the corners. "You will identify yourselves immediately and prepare to be escorted to a proper greeting station, where you may present suitable offerings to His Eternal Magnificence, Emperor Drakthor." Admiral Zektar finally concluded. John cleared his throat, trying to maintain his composure. "This is Captain John Miller of the Earth Alliance vessel Intrepid. We are an exploration fleet from Earth, engaged in peaceful mapping of this sector." The Admiral's face contorted in what might have been confusion. "You dare approach the boundaries of the mighty Vargan Empire with merely 5 vessels. Where is the rest of your fleet? Where are your display ships? Your honor guard?" Linda Garcia, the tactical officer, couldn't contain herself any longer. A small snort of laughter escaped her lips. She quickly tried to cover it with a cough. But the damage was done. Other crew members were hiding smiles behind their hands. Admiral Zektar's eyes narrowed. "What is the meaning of this reaction? You stand before the might of the greatest empire in the galaxy." John tried to maintain his professional demeanor. But when one of the decorative spires on the Admiral's uniform suddenly drooped to one side, he couldn't help it. A smile broke across his face. "Our apologies, Admiral. We mean no disrespect. This is our first contact with your impressive empire." "Impressive? Merely impressive." The Admiral puffed up, causing another ornament to tilt precariously. "The Vargan Empire is magnificent, glorious. All tremble before our approach." At that moment, the massive crown-shaped flagship fired what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial energy burst. Colorful lights sprayed in all directions, creating a dazzling but completely impractical display that consumed enough energy to power the Intrepid for a month. The entire bridge crew lost their battle with composure. Laughter bubbled up throughout the command center. "How dare you?" Admiral Zektar's face turned a darker shade of blue. "Your insolence will not be tolerated. You will explain this disrespectful behavior immediately." John took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "Admiral, I apologize. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss our cultural differences. We would be honored to learn more about your magnificent empire." The Admiral seemed momentarily appeased, though clearly confused by the ongoing smiles he saw on the human faces. "Very well. Prepare to receive boarding coordinates. The Empire will determine if your species is worthy of our attention." As the transmission ended, John looked around at his still grinning crew. "Well," he said, This first contact just got interesting. Susan Gray had never expected to become the key figure in humanity's first major alien diplomatic crisis. As the Intrepid's diplomatic officer, she now faced the difficult task of explaining to the Vargans why humans found them so amusing without starting an interstellar war. "The Admiral is ready to see you," announced a Vargan guard. His uniform had so many medals that Susan wondered how he could stand upright. She entered the meeting room aboard the massive Vargan flagship. The room was impossibly large for its purpose, with ceilings that stretched at least 30 feet high and golden decorations covering every surface. Admiral Zector sat on what could only be described as a portable throne, surrounded by attendants waving large feathered fans. "Diplomatic Officer Gray," the Admiral said stiffly, "you will explain why your captain and crew responded with this behavior you call laughter upon meeting the greatest empire in the galaxy." Susan took a deep breath. "Admiral, humans value efficiency and practicality. When we see something that seems excessive or impractical, we sometimes respond with amusement." "Excessive?" The Admiral's eye ridges shot up. "The Empire's greatness must be displayed properly. How else would lesser civilizations recognize our power?" Susan glanced at the engine room diagram displayed on a nearby screen. She pointed to it carefully. "For example, your main engines. They're housed in those decorative golden chambers, correct?" "Of course. The golden chambers of propulsion are famous throughout 12 star systems. But the gold plating adds weight without improving function," Susan explained. "On human ships, we focus on making engines more powerful while using fewer resources." The Admiral looked genuinely confused. But then how would everyone know how important the engines are? Susan struggled to find the right words. "We believe the performance speaks for itself. Your engines create beautiful light displays, but our scans show they use 5 times the fuel for the same speed." A younger Vargan officer in the corner made a small noise that Susan couldn't interpret. The Admiral shot him a warning look. "Our propulsion technology is designed to inspire awe. The radiant cosmic trails are a symbol of the Empire's brilliance." Susan nodded politely. "They are certainly beautiful. But may I ask about your weapon systems?" The Admiral perked up. "Ah, the magnificent stellar destroyers. Each cannon requires the energy of a small sun and creates a display of destructive beauty unmatched in the galaxy." He pressed a button, showing footage of a Vargan weapon firing bursts of multicolored energy that spiraled dramatically before hitting its target. Susan watched the slow, spiraling projectiles with growing amazement. No wonder the humans had laughed. These weapons sacrificed speed and efficiency for showmanship. "Admiral, I hope I can help you understand. Humans built our technology differently. Our ships are smaller because they only include necessary components. Our weapons are designed to hit targets quickly and effectively, not to look impressive." The Admiral stared at her. "You mean your civilization values function over appearance?" "Exactly," Susan said, relieved. "How primitive," the Admiral declared. "Clearly your species has not yet evolved to appreciate true power. True power must be seen, must be displayed." At that moment, the lights in the room flickered. A Vargan technician rushed in, whispering urgently to the Admiral. "Minor technical difficulty," the Admiral announced, looking embarrassed. "The Eternal Glory's main power core requires a brief rest after our welcoming light display." Susan bit her lip to prevent a smile. The massive flagship had drained its power reserves on a light show. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "our engineers could meet with yours. A cultural exchange of ideas." The Admiral seemed ready to dismiss the idea, but the younger officer from the corner stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, it might be valuable to examine the humans' approach. For research purposes only, of course." The Admiral considered this for a moment. "Very well, a limited exchange. But they must first witness the true glory of the Empire. They will be invited to Vargoria Prime, where the Emperor himself will show them what real power looks like." Susan nodded diplomatically, already wondering how Captain Miller and the others would react to what promised to be an even more extravagant display on the Imperial throne world. Captain John Miller looked out the shuttle window as they approached Vargoria Prime. The planet was unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive golden structures covered much of the surface, reflecting sunlight so brightly that the planet practically glowed. "It looks like someone bedazzled an entire world," whispered Engineer Alan Peterson, who sat beside him. John nodded. "Remember, we're here as diplomats. Try not to laugh." The small human delegation consisted of Captain Miller, Engineer Peterson, Science Officer Kate Williams, and Security Chief Frank Martinez. They had been invited to meet Emperor Drakthor himself, a rare honor according to Admiral Zektar. Their shuttle was escorted by 20 Vargan ships, each one firing colorful bursts of energy into space in what seemed to be some kind of ceremonial formation. By the time they reached the atmosphere, Frank was biting his cheek to keep from laughing. "They'd burned enough fuel to power the Intrepid for a month," he muttered, "just to make pretty lights." The shuttle landed on an enormous platform that could have easily held 50 more shuttles. They were greeted by a procession of Vargan officials, each trying to outdo the others with elaborate uniforms and decorations. "Welcome, humans, to Vargoria Prime, Jewel of the Empire," announced their guide, a tall Vargan named Galex. "You will now be taken to the Grand Imperial Palace by ceremonial transport." The ceremonial transport turned out to be a massive vehicle covered in precious metals and gemstones. It moved incredibly slowly, taking nearly an hour to travel what looked like only a few miles. "Is it always this slow?" Kate asked. Galex looked proud. "Yes, the Imperial procession vehicle moves at the traditional pace set by Emperor Zol the Magnificent 5 centuries ago. It would be disrespectful to rush through the sacred boulevards." Frank coughed to cover another laugh. Of course. The city around them was a monument to excess. Buildings were constructed with no apparent concern for practicality, with spires that served no purpose and entrances that required climbing unnecessary steps. Transportation systems seemed designed to be as visible and complicated as possible. When they finally reached the palace, they were led through a maze of corridors lined with treasures from across the galaxy. Everything was covered in gold, jewels, or rare materials. "The Grand Throne Room," Galex announced as they approached massive doors that took 12 Vargans to push open. Inside was a space so large that it had its own weather systems. Clouds actually formed near the distant ceiling. In the center, atop hundreds of steps, sat Emperor Drakthor on a throne that could only be described as comically oversized. "Approach," boomed the Emperor's voice, amplified by hidden speakers. The humans began the long walk across the room, painfully aware of hundreds of Vargan eyes watching them. When they reached the stairs, they realized they were expected to climb all of them. "You've got to be kidding," Alan whispered as they began the ascent. By the time they reached the top, the humans were breathing heavily. The Emperor, a Vargan with skin a deeper blue than the others, and wearing what looked like a small building on his head, studied them with interest. "So you are the humans who laughed at my empire," the Emperor said. "Admiral Zektar tells me your species values efficiency." He said the word as if it tasted strange. "We do, Your Majesty," John replied respectfully. "We admire the grandeur of your civilization, but our approach is different." "Show me," the Emperor demanded suddenly. "Show me this human efficiency." John looked surprised. "Here now." "Yes. My engineers tell me your tiny ships contain technology that might be useful. Prove your worth to the Empire." Ellen stepped forward. "If I may, Your Majesty, I could demonstrate the principles of our engine designs using just a few materials." The Emperor waved a hand, and servants rushed to bring whatever Alan requested. As the engineer began to construct a simple model, Frank leaned over to John. "I think I understand now," he whispered. They'd been so focused on looking powerful that they'd forgotten how to actually advance. John nodded slightly. "And now they're starting to realize it." Around them, Several younger Vargans were watching Alan's demonstration with undisguised fascination, while the older court officials looked uncomfortable. Something was changing in the Empire, and the humans had accidentally started it with a simple laugh. High Commander Vortek slammed his fist on the table, causing the ornate decorations to rattle. The emergency council meeting had been going for hours, and his patience was wearing thin. "These humans mock us with their simple ships and talk of efficiency," he growled. "I demand we show them the true might of the Imperial fleet." Emperor Drakthor sat quietly on his portable throne, watching the debate. The human engineers' demonstration the day before had created quite a stir among the younger officers. "Perhaps," the Emperor finally said, "a demonstration is indeed necessary." Captain John Miller and his team were summoned to the Imperial Military Academy, a structure so large and needlessly complex that it took them 30 minutes just to reach the main hall from the entrance. "Captain Miller," High Commander Vortek announced, his voice echoing dramatically in the vast chamber. "The Empire challenges your human vessels to a series of military exercises to determine which approach to technology is superior." John exchanged glances with his team. This was not what they had expected. "We are an exploration fleet, Commander, not a military one," he replied carefully. "Are you afraid to test your efficiency against our might?" Vortek sneered. Frank Martinez stepped forward. "We accept your challenge." The first test was set for the following day. A simple race between an Imperial shuttle and a human shuttle around Vargoria's 3 moons. The Vargan craft was twice the size of the human one, decorated with golden accents and ceremonial banners. "That thing looks like it belongs in a parade, not a race," Alan whispered as they prepared their shuttle. Kate Williams took the pilot's seat. "Their shuttle has more powerful engines, but all that decoration creates drag. Plus, they'll waste energy on light displays." When the race began, the Vargan shuttle shot forward with an impressive burst of colorful energy. For a moment, it pulled ahead. Then Kate maneuvered their smaller, sleeker craft with precise efficiency, taking a tighter curve around the first moon. By the time they reached the 3rd moon, the human shuttle was far ahead. They crossed the finish line while the Vargan shuttle was still navigating the second turn, its flashy engines struggling under the weight of all its decorations. In the observation room, young Vargan officers whispered among themselves while Vortek fumed. "The second test will be weapons accuracy," he declared. "This time, both sides will use a small fighter craft to hit targets in an asteroid field." The Vargan fighter launched with a spectacular display, its weapons firing bursts of spiraling energy that twisted through space in complex patterns before striking near, but rarely directly hitting, the targets. Frank piloted the human fighter with calm precision. His weapons were simple railguns and focused laser systems. Each shot fired straight and true, hitting targets dead center without wasted energy. The score wasn't even close. The humans hit 47 of 50 targets. The Vargans hit only 12. "Their weapons are so boring," one Vargan official complained. "Where is the artistry, the beauty?" "In the results," Alan replied simply. The final test was a simulated battle between the human ship Intrepid and an Imperial cruiser of similar size. The simulation showed the Imperial ship firing spectacular but slow weapons, while the Intrepid's practical defense systems easily blocked them. Meanwhile, the human ship's precise, efficient attacks quickly disabled the Imperial vessel's key systems. When the simulation ended, silence filled the chamber. "This proves nothing," Vortek shouted, but his voice lacked conviction. A young Vargan officer named Zulax approached the humans. "Your technology is remarkable in its simplicity," he said quietly. "Some of us have been saying for years that we should focus less on appearance and more on function." Emperor Drakthor watched this exchange with thoughtful eyes. "Captain Miller," he called out, "it seems your human efficiency has merit, but there are still matters to discuss. Meet me in my private chambers tomorrow." As they left, Kate noticed several young Vargan engineers huddled around tablets, studying recordings of the human technology with intense interest. I think we've started something, she told John. Let's hope it's not a war, he replied. But war was exactly what High Commander Vortek was planning as he stormed away from the testing grounds, his pride wounded more deeply than he would admit. Kate Williams followed the young Vargan engineer Zilax through narrow plain corridors that seemed strangely out of place on Vargoria Prime. Unlike the grand decorative halls of the Imperial Palace, these passages were practical and simple. We must be quiet, Zilax whispered. Few know about these service tunnels. The high officials think it beneath them to use such plain pathways. Where are you taking me? Kate asked. To meet others who think like me. They entered a large room filled with Vargans working on various projects. Unlike the Imperial engineers with their decorated uniforms, these Vargans wore simple clothes. The room was packed with equipment that looked far more practical than anything Kate had seen elsewhere on the planet. Welcome to the underground, Zilax said proudly. We are engineers and scientists who believe the Empire has lost its way. An older Vargan approached them. I am Professor Nex. For decades, I have taught engineering at the Imperial Academy while secretly working here. Your human technology confirms what we have long suspected. Our Empire sacrifices progress for appearance. Kate looked around in amazement. How many of you are there? Thousands across the Empire, Nex replied. On every world, there are those who question our obsession with display. But we must hide our work or be branded as traitors. Meanwhile, in a secluded chamber in the Imperial Palace, Captain John Miller and Alan Peterson met with Emperor Drakthor. Surprisingly, the Emperor had dismissed his usual entourage of servants and guards. Captain Miller, the Emperor said, his voice lacking its usual theatrical quality. What I am about to share must remain between us. John nodded, curious about this change in the Emperor's demeanor. For centuries, the Empire has maintained power through perception. Our ships look fearsome, our weapons appear devastating, and our cities seem grand. But the reality, the Emperor sighed. The reality is that we have not truly advanced in over 200 years. Your Majesty, why are you telling us this? John asked. Because I fear we cannot maintain this illusion much longer. Resources grow scarce from maintaining our displays. Younger generations question our ways. And now your humans arrive with your efficient technology, making us look. The Emperor struggled with the word, foolish. Before John could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. Guards rushed in. Your Majesty, intruders in the Imperial Technology Vault, one shouted. Security footage showed High Commander Vortek and several officers removing equipment from the vault where the human shuttle had been stored for examination. He's stealing your technology, the Emperor realized, probably to copy it in secret while publicly denouncing it. John's communicator beeped. It was Frank Martinez. Captain, we have a situation. Armed guards are surrounding our shuttle bay. They're preventing us from returning to the Intrepid. Before John could respond, more guards entered, led by Vortek himself. Arrest the humans, Vortek commanded. They have shared forbidden technology with Imperial traitors. Stand down, Commander, the Emperor ordered. I apologize, Your Majesty, but this is for the good of the Empire, Vortek replied. These humans make us look weak with their so-called efficiency. They must be imprisoned while we appropriate their technology. John stepped forward. Commander, we didn't come here to start a conflict. We're happy to share our technology openly, as allies. Vortek looked stunned. Share, freely, without conquest. That's how humans prefer to operate. Alan added, cooperation usually works better than conflict. As Vortek struggled to comprehend this concept, Kate's voice came through on John's communicator. Captain, you need to see this. I'm with a group of Vargan engineers who have been developing technology in secret. They've been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. The Emperor looked from the communicator to Vortek, then to John. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. Perhaps, he said slowly, it is time for the Empire to consider a new approach. Vortex's face darkened with anger. Impossible. The Empire's glory is built on displays of power, not cooperation. And yet, the Emperor replied, looking at the humans, these visitors with their simple ships have accomplished what your grand fleet could not. They have made us question ourselves. News traveled fast across the Vargan Empire. Within days, stories about the humans and their efficient technology spread to dozens of worlds. The tales grew with each telling. Humans who could build ships without decoration, weapons that wasted no energy on displays, and engines that used a fraction of the fuel. On the imperial capital, tensions reached a breaking point. The palace plaza filled with younger Vargans demanding change, while traditionalists gathered to support High Commander Vortek. Inside the palace, the Imperial Council was in chaos. "We cannot abandon centuries of tradition," shouted Council Elder Draz. "Our displays of power keep order in the Empire. But our resources dwindle while we waste them on appearances," argued a younger counselor. "The humans have shown us another way." Emperor Drakthor sat silently, watching the debate rage. Finally, he raised his hand, and the room fell quiet. "Bring in the humans," he commanded. Captain John Miller and his team entered the council chamber. They were accompanied by Zelax and Professor Nex from the underground movement. "Captain Miller," the Emperor addressed him, "your arrival has created quite a disruption in my empire." "That wasn't our intention, Your Majesty," John replied. "Perhaps not. But now I face a difficult decision. Half my empire sees your ways as the path forward. The other half views you as a threat to everything we value." Outside, the sounds of protests grew louder. High Commander Vortek stepped forward. "The solution is simple, Your Majesty. We take their technology by force, adapt it to our needs, and remove these humans. And start a war with Earth." Susan Gray asked, "Is that really what's best for your people?" Zelax moved to stand beside the humans. "Your Majesty, for too long we have hidden our work because it wasn't grand enough, decorative enough. But look at what we've created." He activated a small device, projecting images of designs created by the underground movement. Ships and buildings that combined Vargan aesthetics with human practicality. "We don't have to abandon our cultural identity to embrace efficiency," Zelax explained. "We can have both." Alan Peterson nodded. "Your empire values beauty and display. There's nothing wrong with that, but function and beauty can exist together." The Emperor studied the designs with interest. "These maintain our imperial style while incorporating human efficiency." "Yes, Your Majesty," Professor Nex confirmed. "We've been developing these concepts for years, but feared sharing them." A loud crash interrupted the discussion as the palace shook. Vortek's communicator buzzed with urgent reports. "Protests have turned violent in 3 sectors," he announced, "and Imperial ships at Outpost 7 are refusing orders, demanding technological reforms." "The Empire is falling apart," Council Elder Draz said in horror. John stepped forward. "Your Majesty, may I make a suggestion?" The Emperor nodded. "Show your people that you're listening. Announce reforms that combine Vargan culture with new efficiency. Give Professor Nex and his engineers official positions to lead these changes." "And what would humans gain from this?" Vortek demanded suspiciously. "An ally," John replied simply. "Earth doesn't want to conquer your empire. We want to trade, share knowledge, and learn from each other." The Emperor stood, making his decision. "Prepare a broadcast to all Imperial worlds." Hours later, Emperor Drakthor addressed his empire. Gone was his enormous ceremonial crown and many of his decorations. He spoke plainly about the challenges facing their civilization and the changes to come. "The Empire will not abandon its proud heritage," he declared, "but we will evolve. Beauty and efficiency will become our new standard." He announced the formation of a new Imperial Technology Council, led jointly by traditional engineers and members of the former underground movement. As the broadcast ended, John turned to his team. "Well, I think we've done all we can here. Kate smiled as she watched young Vargan engineers eagerly sharing ideas with Alan. "Captain, I think this is just the beginning." 6 months had passed since the humans first encountered the Vargan Empire. Captain John Miller stood on the observation deck of the Intrepid, watching as the newly redesigned Imperial flagship approached for the ceremony. "It's still pretty flashy," Frank Martinez commented, standing beside him. John smiled, but noticed the engine design. All that gold plating is now just a thin decorative layer. The actual propulsion system uses our efficiency principles. The new Imperial vessel, renamed Practical Glory, still maintained the crown-like appearance of traditional Vargan ships, but with countless modifications. Gone were the unnecessary spires and weight-adding decorations. The colorful energy trails remained but used only a fraction of the power they once did. "They found a balance," Susan Gray said. "Beauty without waste." The ceremony marking the official formation of the Human-Vargan Alliance was held in space, halfway between the Intrepid and the Imperial flagship. The enormous throne room that once occupied a third of the Vargan ship had been replaced with practical meeting chambers, though still decorated in Imperial style. Emperor Drakthor greeted John with a simple handshake, an Earth custom he had adopted. His ceremonial garments were now much lighter, allowing him to move without the help of servants. "Captain Miller, your arrival changed the Empire forever," the Emperor said as they signed the Alliance documents. "Some still say you humiliated us with your laughter." "And what do you say, Your Majesty?" John asked. "I say you woke us up." The Emperor gestured to the viewscreen showing dozens of Vargan ships in the distance. "Our fleet is now twice as effective with half the resource consumption. Our cities are being redesigned to be both beautiful and functional. For the first time in centuries, we are truly advancing." Zelax, now the head of the Imperial Science Division, approached with Professor Nex and Kate Williams. The three had spent months working together on joint projects. "We've just completed the retrofit of the 57th Imperial cruiser," Zelax reported proudly. "Efficiency increased by 80%, while maintaining 90% of the traditional appearance." "And what about Vortek?" John asked quietly. The Emperor's expression darkened slightly. "The High Commander has accepted a position overseeing an outpost at the edge of the Empire. Many traditionalists followed him. They may never fully accept our new direction." Alan Peterson joined them, carrying a small device. "Your Majesty, we've completed the modifications to the Imperial Communication Network. This will reduce power consumption by 60% while actually improving signal strength." The Emperor took the device, examining it with interest. "You know, when your ships first appeared and your crew laughed at our fleet, I was deeply offended. How could these tiny vessels with no decoration dare mock the might of the Empire?" "And now?" Susan asked. "Now I understand that true power doesn't need to announce itself with excessive display. Efficiency has its own elegance." The Emperor chuckled. "Though we Vargans will always appreciate a bit of gold trim." Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of the Alliance, John took one last look at the Imperial fleet. The ships still had their distinctive Vargan style, but now they moved with purpose and precision that hadn't existed before. "You know," Frank said, "I never thought our laughter would change an entire empire." "Sometimes," Susan replied, "people need to see themselves through others' eyes to recognize when they've lost their way." As the Intrepid set course for Earth, John watched the Vargan ships execute a farewell formation. It was still theatrical, still distinctly Vargan, but no longer wasteful or impractical. "They haven't lost who they are," John observed. "They've just found a better way to be themselves." Behind them, the newly efficient ships of the Vargan Empire sparkled against the darkness of space, proving that even the most tradition-bound civilization could evolve when shown a better path, even if that path began with human laughter.